people buy from companies, people do business with people, right? So if it's anything that is a commodity, if there's not a lot of differentiation, there's not a lot of complexity to it, you're going to see that direct sales person with a heartbeat going away from that. There's going to be marketplaces that address that need where, hey, I just need X number of this component that meets this specification. I need 3 quotes. I need to know price, lead time, what maybe reviews or some past performance of that equipment, whatever. And then you're going to see on the solution side, on the people do business with people side, that's still going to exist, right? So you really need to stake a claim if you're getting into sales, business development, working for organizations in more of a complex environment. And we see a lot of that in the data center space where it's not just a commodity sale. Even if it's a chiller, a piece of electrical hardware, there's so much more that goes into it regarding the reliability of the lead times. This is going to actually arrive on site. I want a person to be able to manage that relationship back within the organization that I'm doing business with.
What happens when 25 of the world's leading data center facilities experts look into their crystal ball? Over the next 5 years, we're expecting that data center facilities will change more than they have in the last 2 decades. AI-driven workloads, grid sustainability bottlenecks, power and overall sustainability pressures, plus a radically more self-directed buyer's journey are all rewriting what it means to design, operate, and grow digital infrastructure. I'm Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast. And in this very special episode of uncensored predictions about power constraints, AI-driven workloads, sustainability pressures, and how facilities will evolve in the next few years, you'll learn from top data center facility experts from all over the globe, from solo consultants and startups, all the way to some of the industry's most well-known companies, including Bureau Veritas, Eaton, Johnson Controls, Siemens, Schneider Electric, Legrand, and Vertiv. First up, Mark Acton from Acton Consulting in the UK.
Hi, it's Mark Acton from Acton Consulting, and you're watching the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast hosted by Joshua Feinberg.
Mark, when you look into your crystal ball and you think 2, 3, 4 years out from now, how do you think different roles and job functions and responsibilities are going to change in the data center, and especially with those that are client-facing, like in consulting roles or sales or product management, channel partnerships?
So it's a really difficult question to answer because we're subject to such change. AI, the whole high density workload that we're facing at the moment, how on earth do you sell space in the data center right now when you're not really sure how much power demand, what the power density is going to be? So I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer. And again, I'll probably go back to one of my previous answers and say it's all about being flexible and being able to adapt to the changing conditions. What are we going to look like? I think we're going to look like the same people. But I think we'll probably have slightly different skills. I think we're probably going to have to be a bit more technical. I think the idea that a data center is going to be a data center product is going to be a standard product, a traditional tier 3 type co-location center, I think is going away. Those sorts of workloads will continue to exist. They're not going away. Not everything is going to go to your 50, 60, 70 kilowatt workload to satisfy HPC or AI demand. That is going to be out there unquestionably, but all the stuff that we've got going on at the moment is also going to be out there as well. So I think it's going to be a much more differentiated market. I think it's going to be much more driven by regulation, and particularly by sustainability regulation, energy efficiency, power demand. I think all that's going to play into it hugely, and I think you'll probably see more differentiation about where people go into relation in relation to power cost and the type of power that's available. So renewable power is obviously going to be a preference. The cost of that power, obviously, and that's changed massively in the last 2 or 3 years or so. I think people are going to have to be much more adaptable. It's not going to be as possibly as standard as it has been in the past. I think there's going to be more change, more variation. And I think, again, people may be going to have to be a little bit more technical at understanding some of the drivers around the power, driven by the demand on the IT side. So, I think, brush up on the technical skills, I would suggest.
Hi, I'm Patricia Alvina from Siemens Singapore. I'm part of the Energy Performance and Sustainability teams, and welcome to Data Center Go-to-Market Podcast.
If you were to look into your crystal ball and think ahead 2, 4, maybe 5 years out from now, how do you see the role of sales professionals in and around data centers and digital infrastructure, specifically that deal with energy and facilities, changing in the coming years?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe the sales will be sales. You still have to turn leads into opportunities into a deal, into a project. So there still be the function of sales. But the things that we have to understand is that the consumer will get smarter and smarter as the internet will become more available for everybody, especially in Singapore, where we have the ideal situation of information flow. What I'm saying that is that if, let's say, you say something to a person, a company A today, likely that company B, C, and D might heard about the same thing next week. So maybe I'm exaggerating here, but that's what I mean by perfect information flow. So the consumer is very highly educated, so they may not need to read more brochures. We don't need to read them brochures, but we need to understand what is the challenge they have behind the question they ask, because sometimes they listen to information, the YouTube and the internet. They understand that it's the product, but how can this product address the challenge? So this could be a lot of listening skill requires, to active listening to understand what is the problem, and try to address that issues by understanding, what is the challenge at hand, what they have done to address the challenge, and what do they feel about it, about the solution they have. They might have done it, they have already have a solution in mind. They might have tried it, so if you just straight away selling the product, then you will not hear about all this stuff, so you want to hear what they say first, and what they have done to address the problem, and how happy they are with the solution. If they are not happy, why they are not happy. If they are not happy, have they done something about it? So keep asking kind of why, and try to learn more about the challenge they have beforehand, and the things they have done before you start selling your solutions. So that's probably my opinion of what could be the future of sales professional will look like for data center.
And that reinforces a theme that I'm hearing a lot in these interviews, is that as the self-propelled buyer's journey becomes the dominant buyer's journey, and this Gartner put out some research a couple of years ago that said that 83% of a typical buyer's journey is over before vendor contact or before they're willing to talk with someone from your sales team. As that continues to get pushed to the right, and their people are doing more and more education before they get to you, the bar is being so raised up for you and members of your team that they're just consuming so much content. And by the time they get to you, their expectations are so next level on what you need to bring to the table that it becomes increasingly difficult to stay 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of the prospects and clients to add value. And I guess this is where it becomes a challenge for a company like Siemens and for sales leaders to continue to provide the training to their team members so that they can add value that's exponentially greater than the surface level knowledge that their prospects and clients bring to the table through self-research.
Yeah, well, indeed, you're right. But we have I would say Siemens is a good company. We have a lot of trainings program here to upskill ourselves, to reach out to the network. We have access to the LinkedIn platform, premium and sales navigators. So it's really good tools to understand about your market and be prepared before you meet your client. I think that's the homework you have to do before you meet anybody. I'm sure you've done a lot of homework about me as well before this interview.
Yeah, I mean, it's table stakes to now go in before anyone goes into any meeting. It's expected that you spend at least a few minutes looking at the LinkedIn profiles. And if there's multiple stakeholders, because you're fortunate enough to be meeting with the decision committee, of course, a few minutes learning about the different perspectives of individual stakeholders. And usually what ends up happening is you have one person, either their internal champion or your initial foot in the door, that can sometimes give you the lay of the land a little bit. But yeah, the tools, now that these tools exist, there's really no excuse for people to go in cold anymore. Always in CRMs too, provide a tremendous amount of detail on the kind of content that people have consumed, videos they've watched, webinars they've attended, blogs they've read, and just it's getting to the point where it used to give you a competitive advantage to do this kind of research 10 years ago. I think you're actually at a massive disadvantage now relative to other companies that approach this space if this isn't part of your overall toolkit.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like if I have to do sales 10 years ago with all these tools, like how do you know your people? How do you know what they're thinking about? What is their concern? So you have to really explain everything from scratch, and to use the word they use. Now we have LinkedIn to understand like how they phrase their posts, what are the terms they're looking at. But without that, then you really takes time to get to know your clients. So, and but I guess that's the benefit of internet today. So information flow faster, and the more dynamics in the economy.
Yeah, it's amazing in less than 20 years how much of a major part of B2B selling that LinkedIn has become. It's sometimes easy to forget that it's only been, I think I got on LinkedIn in 2008. I think it was around for 3 or 4 years before that. But yeah, it really only hit mainstream adoption, tipping point maybe in the mid 2010s. And yeah, it's to the point now where I sometimes talk with people and they're like, I don't have time to get good at social media. I'm like, you don't have to get good at all social media. Just pay attention to the one that matters the most, where your prospects and clients are. And of course, do your homework to validate it. But you're almost certainly going to find that LinkedIn is the place that needs people's attention, both for their own personal brand and as a tool to build rapport and learn more about what their prospects and clients need.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Hello, Oliver Bredgaard here from Hopman at the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast.
When you look at what you work on, your daily routines, your weekly routines, I know you mentioned that you're a big fan of attending conferences and local meetups. What do you think may change about where you spend your time over the next 2 years? And what do you think may be the same when you look into your crystal ball about what it takes to be a business development manager in the data center industry?
First of all, I think this industry is very tough to predict. But I think in 2 years from now, we will definitely see even more data centers. That's for sure. It's some of the most exploding and evolving industries in the world. So I think we will see way more companies as well. I think we will see smaller companies trying to find their way into this industry. We will probably see many more companies manufacturing the same things because they want a piece of the big cake. So I don't think it will be boring the next couple of years. What I don't see changing right now is the way we're gonna work in terms of getting in touch with people. Because for me, in an industry that is very much dominated by AI and all these software things where things are getting automated and all the support functions as well, then we need the human relationship So attending in trade shows and be a part of your association within your country, I think that would be a very good way of approaching the next couple of years. So you will be a part of that network, and you will be able to be around people that have the right knowledge inside this industry.
So it sounds like the big constant is, even as the technology changes, even as conversations around sustainability change, even as new stakeholders emerge, the one constant seems to be that being part of the ecosystem, being part of the local community is incredibly important to success as a business development manager.
Exactly.
Do you want to take your learnings from this podcast episode to the next level? We've got you covered. We've prepared a special companion guide to help you do so. Over the next 5 years, data center facilities are going to change more than they have in the previous 2 decades. AI-driven workloads, grid bottlenecks, power and sustainability pressures, and a radically self-driven buyer's journey are going to dramatically change and rewrite what it means to design, operate, and grow digital infrastructure. In this ebook, which you'll find in the description for the podcast episode, you'll hear from 25 frontline experts, commissioning engineers, facilities leaders, power and cooling innovators, go-to-market executives, and founders share how they see the future unfolding. You'll learn what's coming for power and on-site generation, high density and AI-ready designs, operations 2.0, sustainability and regulation, plus the careers and skills that will be in highest demand. Whether you're responsible for facility, operations, or go-to-market, this is your playbook for staying relevant and creating advantage in the next wave of growth. Download your copy now from the link in the description.
Hi, this is Matt Caldwell, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
I think we're already starting to see it to a certain degree on parts of sales, even B2B sales, that are very commoditized, where the unit economics make it really tough for staffing with people, especially in certain geographic locations where the comp is considerably higher. Even among some of the bigger data center operators, I've seen them move, like sign up for things like bare metal to look more like e-commerce, whereas 10 years ago, there would have been an inside sales team. There may not have been dedicated reps, but there would have been people. Now they've determined that certain parts of this are at a price point where it's just not palatable for unit economics to have salespeople involved. I remember hosting going through this 15, 20 years ago in the early days of web hosting in the late 90s and early 2000s. There were people that were selling SMB web hosting.
Yeah,
not so much anymore.
I think what you're going to see is people buy from companies, people do business with people, right? So I think you're going to see, if it's anything that is a commodity, if it really, there's not a lot of differentiation, there's not a lot of complexity to it, you're going to see that direct sales person with a heartbeat going away from that. There's going to be marketplaces that address that need, where, hey, I just need X number of this component that meets this specification. I need 3 quotes. I need to know price, lead time, what, maybe reviews or some past performance of that equipment, whatever. And then you're going to see on the solution side, on the people do business with people side, that's still going to exist, right? So you really need to stake a claim if you're getting into sales, business development, working for organizations in more of a complex environment. And we see a lot of that in the data center space, where it's not just a commodity sale. Even if it's a chiller, if it's a piece of electrical hardware, there's so much more that goes into it regarding the reliability of the lead times. This is going to actually arrive on site. I want a person to be able to manage that relationship back within the organization that I'm doing business with. And I would encourage my daughter, I would encourage anybody getting into the data center space to lean towards that side of things, the more person-to-person complex solution sales, as opposed to the commodity side of things. And I joke that my unofficial title, Director of Steaks and Beverages, that job description is going to be the last job that AI can take, right? Because there is a value to sitting across the table from somebody eating Wagyu and drinking a nice glass of Cabernet that you cannot replicate with an AI agent. And at the end of the day, people want to do business with people. They want to trust people. They want people who are not just looking to sell them something, but actually solve a problem. And an example of that is getting a call from a client that's like, hey, we've got an immediate need. It has to be something off the shelf. It doesn't necessarily fit into Hyper's business model. I'm not going to say, hey, no, we can't help you. I will ask internally. I'll say, hey, is this something we can do? And if it's not, I will go to the industry and be like, I just got to solve this person's problem. I don't have a stake in the game. I'm not trying to make money off this, but I need to solve this customer's problem, because when they have that big order, when they're looking for more of, what fits into Hyper's business model of building quality at scale, I want them to think of me as a person that can solve any problem, not just the immediate need that fits nicely into the square box of the hole that Hyper can fill. And I think that's really my advice to people getting into the industry, is be somebody that's useful, somebody that can solve problems, kind of like Shawshank Redemption with Red. Like, you can get anything from the guy. Like, you want to be that guy for your segment of the industry, right? When I say segment, I'm not even just talking about power cooling, but like the physical infrastructure, the IT hardware, kind of fit what is the world in which I live in? What are the solutions that I can provide? And then align yourself with the best organizations in your industry, where you can solve most of the problems that your customers are asking for.
So it's not just a matter of being very discerning about the companies that you align yourself with, for sure, making sure that they're solving a complex enough problem that the unit economics are strong enough to sustain the kind of professionals like yourself, but it's recognizing just how much it's way beyond just being an account executive or a similar kind of role. It's being truly seen as a consultant and a teacher and a subject matter expert and a trusted advisor when it comes to anything and everything that's directly or indirectly related to your category.
You said it way better than I did. Thank you.
We look at that's a lot of what we think the future of sales, being the future of AE, looks like, to get back into that journey that by default is now very self-propelled and very self-driven. Because Matt, you're essentially competing for time against someone going to ChatGPT and saying, I don't know, Schneider, Vertiv, Legrand, they can't deliver. What are my alternatives for being able to get this? And you'd much rather be in a position where your prospects and clients come to you and say, hey, Matt, can we set up a time to talk? I want to bounce something off of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing about the data center industry is that the pie is growing so quickly that everybody's helping each other out. Whatever you do, you're niche in this space, because you're not doing something exactly the way everybody else is doing it. So as opposed to other industries or other times in the data center space, it's not so much cutting up the pie. It's just the pie is expanding so quickly, just filling the void of like, all right, what is needed in this space today? And it makes for a very nice industry to work in, because of the fact that, there's competitors of mine that are also close personal friends, because we grew up, we came up through Schneider Electric together. And we also know the same mutual friend who's working at an owner now, a developer that we're talking to, and we can all sit at a bar and have a drink together and be cordial and, share ideas, about industry or whatever else, and not so much worried about who's getting which slice of the pie, but just watching this thing grow. And that's kind of the biggest selling point for me talking to people outside the industry on why they should get into the data center space, is because it's a close-knit community of people who all know each other. And for the most part, they're all looking out for each other's best interests. So it's a fun time to be here, for sure.
Hello, I'm Giuseppe Caltabiano. I'm Senior Director of Marketing for AVK, and you are watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
The final area I want to ask you about, Giuseppe, today is how you envision your role changing in the next 2, 3, 4 years when you look into your crystal ball. How does marketing and mid-market enterprise technology in and around the data center space, do you think it's going to change much, change a lot? How do you envision your role changing when you think of 2, 3, 4 years out from now?
I think in general terms, our role as marketers will evolve and will be taking more and more space. I mean, I think it was you mentioning the fact that the buyer journey today is mostly detached from personal sales contacts, right? Sales is still critical, but it's really the very end of the cycle, which in a way is giving more space and more importance to us. So I think we need to own the buyer journey in a way. We should be prepared to do this, and this is probably giving the marketing roles more importance than the one they have today in the data center space. So in general terms, I think I see a very bright future for marketing in data center. I mean, it's a growing space. It requires a proper narrative. Without a good narrative, you probably go anywhere, in terms of institutions, public opinion, and where is this narrative coming from? Well, from us. So I think we have the possibility to play a key role, but at the same time, we need to be prepared, meaning we cannot just focus on the PR and communication stuff. We need to be proper marketers with the proper education, understanding narrative, understanding go-to-market, all this kind of stuff. And if we are prepared enough, there will be a lot of space for us in the future. So I see this as a very bright future for us marketers, and a wonderful sector to be in. So I really encourage marketers also coming from other B2B spaces eventually to try and join us, because I think this may be a pretty interesting area for us. Again, regardless growth, which is endemic, I mean, it's part of the nature of the sector. It's the right time to be here. We need, again, to be prepared and be ready to go with a proper narrative. But this is the space to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the one thing that didn't come up that I hear from a lot of people that are on the development side and operators is everything you just talked about applies equally the same for when you're trying to influence external stakeholders that can decide whether to greenlight a development project or stop it in its tracks. So using the same kind of personas, education, trust building, webinars, and podcasting to influence elected officials, regulators, utility companies can have a massive impact on whether development projects can actually happen. And again, it's all back to the same idea of educating and building trust and getting hyper specific and having a lot of empathy about understanding the role that a particular person has in this process.
Absolutely. Agree. 100%.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Carlini with Schneider Electric, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
With all of this change happening at the macro, at the industry level, how do you see your own daily, weekly routines changing?
Yeah, like I said, it's the number of investor relation people I talk to, it's a lot higher, and the number of people that are interested, the different industries and the different types of press analysts, the number of analysts that are covering data centers now, I think just doubled, over the last 6 months. We're getting all this interest. Hey, we want to talk to you and show you what we have. It's just amazing. So my role is less. It's more about taking this very, very complicated technical thing that's going on in the data center industry and kind of communicating that in a way that a lot of people can understand.
So it seems like there's been this emergence of investor relations related work that's popped up in the last couple of years just because there's so much more capital going into the space.
There's so much more capital, and it's driving, a lot of the growth of a lot of companies. So it's it's the question is still not crystal clear, how a lot of these hyperscalers that have invested these billions of dollars in AI, how that's going to be returned. But it's starting to. That's the other shift that's going on.
This is Aaron Casey with Tubicine here in Texas, and I'm on the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
So, Aaron, now that you've gotten a taste of where things have been headed the last couple of years as AI and high-performance computing and all the density picks up momentum, when you look out into your crystal ball and you think 2, 3, 4 years out from now, how do you think your daily routine is going to change with leading a company like Tubicine?
So, again, I think like the biggest issue is people, right? And so we continue to invest in our people, invest in their knowledge, right? Invest in their ability to solve problems. And so I look 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, I don't think this data center boom right now slows down. Obviously any market can slow down, and things outside of our control can cause a slowdown, but if things stay the way they are, I think they continue to go up. Densities continue to go up, power continues to go up. And so people are going to have to solve problems and solve issues. And so I think the smarter you are, the more knowledge you are, the more information you have around those solutions and those issues, the more people will come to you, right? And so I think that's really what we're trying to do over time, is just continue to educate and help our team solve those problems for the customers that we work with. So
that's continuing to put more of a premium on construing true consulting for your clients as part of the pre-sales and post-sales process, as well as the education that goes along with that.
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, be a trusted advisor. And if we don't have the solution, make sure that we point the customer in the right direction, right? Make sure that we help them say, hey, here, we don't know this solution 100%, but these guys over here, these guys can help you, and these guys will be able to take care of what you need. So it's really, it's a solution provider, and making sure that we always are there to point the customer in the right direction. And if we have a solution, then hopefully we can help them with that too. So it's definitely a solution provider mentality.
Coming from the perspective of someone that had a VAR IT consulting business in the 1990s, it's been really interesting to see over the past 20, 25 years how the technology has evolved and the buyer preferences have certainly changed a ton, but there's still an incredibly important role for the solution provider.
Yeah. I didn't, like we talked about at the very beginning of this whole podcast, it still comes down to relationship, right? So at the end of the day, technology changes, right? We get new AI, we get new liquid cooling servers, and we get all these new technologies, and technologies always change, and everyone says, oh, we're going bigger, and then we get decentralized and we go back to centralized. At the end of the day, it's relationships between customers, engineers, contractors, VARs, all the people that play within that data center. It's all about the relationship and who can help solve the problem and who can solve issues, because ultimately that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to solve for an equation, and they're trying to figure out what the best way to do that. And so I think, at the end of the day, it's still the relationship that you have to have, and you got to make sure that you can help people and solve their problems.
Hi, this is Christian Dupalco from Bureau Veritas. So, and you're watching Go to the Data Center Market podcast. So, see you guys.
Christian, how do you think being a data center commissioning engineer is going to change in the coming years when you look into your crystal ball of like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now?
So, definitely. For example, what I can consider, like, for example, in the near future, like 2026 or 2025. So, for example, it's all about flexibility. So, flexibility. So, like right now, I can say the biggest or the mammoth in this industry is like AWS or Amazon Web Services, and then Google Cloud. So they already let you rent servers by the hour, but for example, like Alibaba Cloud, so in APAC, so it's taking it further with burstable like data centers that scale up in the peak demand. And then right now I can see that the Middle East twist. So in the Middle East, in the UAE, so United Arab Emirates, I heard about the Kazna data centers. So it's partnering with solar farms to offer green EI housing. AI housing. It's like carbon credits for computing if you run your workloads during the day, and then when the sun's out, of course, yeah, you get a discount. And then meanwhile in Europe, we have Ionos. Ionos is just using an AI to dynamically shift workloads between countries based on electricity prices and then carbon emissions. So the future isn't just about selling space; it's about selling smart and sustainable compute. I believe that that's one thing that's will be hitting the next future. Of course, no one knows in the future, but I believe we have the trends. Then we can understand. It's just about sustainability and uptime, and then computation about things. So I believe we keep on learning. We keep on learning from one thing, so we can trial and error. So this might be my my assumption, but I believe the near future there might be some kind of changes. So we don't know. Definitely, there are many people. There are many companies are working out there. So like just maybe jumping from one place to another. So I heard like Blackstone is investing in EarthRank like $45 billion. So I don't know how would they spend that money. It's very, very big. So based on my understanding, in some data centers I will work on like 30 megawatts or 45 megawatts, they just spend like around 50 million and then 50 million euros. So just imagine about 45 billion. So what they are planning to do. So we don't know. So we don't know. Like companies like Microsoft. So jumping, I believe there are so many things that need to consider. But the one thing is much more important is I want to consider, like for example, if you will be designing a data center. So it might not be related, but we do have to understand that designing the center is not just about like for example that this will work and that work, but the most important thing about designing data center is I believe is for example designing in data center is not just in but we have to also consider in not just in extreme conditions, like extreme conditions for designing, but also we need to consider like in actual operating hours. Will be there calling system in the center is efficient or not, and then if the design provide calling for the extreme conditions. So I believe, for example, data center is located from like neighbor. Many peoples are like in commercial places, so it's very noisy. Of course, the chillers are working there, so it's very, very noisy. Generators, whatever, because they need to run generators. So most of the time, and then if they will not be if you will not consider those actual operating hours, if they will consider those things, so there might be of course the neighbors will complain. So there are many things need to consider as well regarding that one. On that part, I believe AI right now, I believe it will be definitely will be much more beautiful in the future. So we don't know, but I'm very interested and very excited what would happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's all I can say from my side.
So huge projects, huge investment levels, a lot more AI, a lot more pressure to pay attention to sustainability and utility grid constraints, and a lot more demand for commissioning expertise.
Yes, definitely. So a lot of demands, and then a lot of coworkers are being needed right now worldwide. So lack of engineers. So they need many, and sometimes they are urgent. Someone is calling you. You go to the Europe, you go to Germany next week, next month. But you need to process some kind of visa, so the company will help. So I just have to give the passport, and then they will do the processing, and then you have to go there. I have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Since it takes time to get some visa based on my passport also, so they will be having a tourist. You just go tourist and going to work there. I don't know how the company do, but that's how they do the things. So I have no choice. I have to go there. So I think that's definitely one thing that they need to consider: the lack of engineers.
Yeah, it's the great part of working for a large company is that you have all this support to take care of a lot of the administrative work that if you were a commissioning consultant on your own or with a small firm, a lot more resource constraints. So there's
exactly.
pros and cons with entrepreneurial path and mid-market companies and enterprise companies. And the Bureau Veritas' legacy brand been around for generations and huge global presence.
Century already.
Yeah, hello, I'm Pierre Ellow from Pronomic, and you are on Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
When you think about where you are right now, Pierre, and how your role might be changing, how the process of running business development for a company like Pronomic may be changing in the next 2, 3, 4 years, do you see much of a difference in how you work with data centers, or do you see that do you anticipate that a lot of what you're doing 2, 3, 4 years from now will look a lot of like what you're doing today?
No, it's also changing. We are talking AI changing with the way, of course, prospect new clients, all new techniques related to AI, ChatGPT or whatever, LinkedIn, and that has changed since, I would say, since the COVID. Since the COVID, a lot of things have changed in the way of going to the market or going to the market to reach out to the client. We also, of course, always making exhibitions. That's also important to continue with, and I don't think that will change in 2, 3 years time. We will continue to make a lot of exhibitions because it's really the moment we can meet the client and show the product. But the approach to clients are really changing. We are working on different levels, of course, normal prospection on LinkedIn, emailing, but also by organizations. We are a member in different organizations. In the Swedish manufacturing organization for data center, of course, is also to create and to be informed about the changes on the market, but also to have a good relations to the big actors, well, not big always, but the actors on the market. And I think that will also change more and more. And I see it now when I would say, in the end of my professional careers, what the young people can do today and the knowledge they have about the different tools existing today. We are talking about cold mailings. We are talking different. I'm not the best guy for this. We have a marketing department for that, but I'm a little bit informed that these tools are changing. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've noticed the same thing. If we're having this conversation 10 years ago, Gartner found about half of a typical buyer's journey was over before someone would meet with someone on a sales team. At the time, I think in the mid-2010s, it was about 56% of a typical journey, like researching, comparing options and evaluating pricing before sales contact. Now, 10 years later, it's in well over 80%. Like most of the research and buyer's journeys, that sales cycle is over because they're just doing so much more research on their own. And for sure, like the couple of years in the early part of the 2020s when millions, tens of millions of people were working from home, that for sure accelerated transformation and is forcing a lot of changes in how companies go to market and educate and build trust. And of course, there's generational changes as well. If there's tends to be anyone that's digitally resistant nearing towards the end of their career, it's very, very likely that as more Gen X and more millennial and eventually Gen Z are moving into these decision committee roles, that they'll be even more interested in being in the driver's seat with this self-driven journey. So yeah, super interesting that you're seeing so much of this, and should play really, really well in what your need to educate your prospects and future clients really early on about what's truly involved in material handling, way beyond just what someone might on a surface level consider a transactional equipment purchase.
Yeah.
So showing up early, showing up and being there as the go-to experts in your space can make an enormous difference.
Hi there, it's Rich Farrell from Eaton, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you think may change about a role like yours over the next 2 to 4 years when you look into your crystal ball. What does it look like to lead a data center, digital transformation, cybersecurity kind of business in this sector?
Yeah, it's probably timely, as we mentioned. I mean, I'm with Eaton a long time, and I plan on being with Eaton a long time, and about to change roles, and change locations still within Eaton. And it's part of the easiest way to answer that question in what I do and how I deal with customers is looking at mature markets versus emerging markets. How we treat a mature market is going to be a lot different to how we engage and treat an emerging market. And by an emerging market, it could be, an example would be in APAC, would be probably, say, let's say Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines are emerging markets in APAC. Mature markets would be China, Japan, Singapore, Australia, probably Malaysia now as well. Throw them in there as well. These markets, how you engage with them is different, because the mature markets are mature for a reason, right? They've got a huge install base in there. They've got a lot of subject matter experts as well. The business keeps churning over, in these locales. You're not scrapping and fighting to be the first into the market or get the first data center. There's dozens of data centers, if not more, hundreds of data centers in some of these cities and countries. So how you engage with them is a lot different. They're mature. They want to make sure that they are looked after. They want to make sure that the pricing, is competitive and correct. They will make sure supply chain, nothing goes over time, and the project is delivered successfully. If you go into an emerging market, it's a lot different. You may be assisting the first entrant into that country or into that city. They may still be looking for land. They still might be trying to acquire power. So what can you do to help them? Okay, what are the conversations you can have? And really a lot of that is you're trying to be the easiest supplier to work with. And this is one of my mantras with my team. When all else fails, be the easiest person to work with, be the easiest company to work with, be the easiest supplier to work with. Because these guys are going into these markets, they've got 100 different things they have to worry about. You try to be the thing they don't have to worry about. Give them peace of mind that you've got to do what you say you're going to do, and you can deliver what you say you're going to deliver. But eventually emerging markets do become mature. So again, that's where you sort of take that, 30,000 foot view, you sort of step back and just make sure you're doing the basics, the engagement, the evangelism, making sure that you're delivering projects, on time, on budget, as well. So in terms of my role changing, I guess how I see it changing is really around that. When you go into a new market, you're very much hands-on. When it's a mature market, you can sort of sit back, especially if you have a great team. And I'm very fortunate where I have a fantastic team here, very mature team, and they're a self-sustaining team as well. That enables me to go in and then get more hands-on, I should say, on other parts of the business. So my role always seems to come back full circle. Starts in one area, we have to work through, then it comes back around again. My role won't really change too much, I shouldn't imagine. I mean, we're always at the whims of what's happening, in the world, economically, geopolitically, let alone what's happening in our industry and what some of the industry drivers are, as well, things like AI and sustainability. But overall, my role in particular, it really depends on where I am at a point in time dealing with a customer or dealing with an organization.
This is Ted Fletcher with FMS Integration, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
You spend a lot of time with operations teams who, with that in mind, have you given much thought to what this is going to look like, what it's going to look like on their side, and what it's going to look like for your business for FMS integration, maybe 2, 3, 4 years out from now? What do you envision changing? How do you see that impacting what you do on a daily basis?
I don't know. So I see a lot of great things with technology-wise. One thing, I was down at a show a couple months ago, and I got to see kind of a blending of using augmented reality and VR, putting QR codes throughout different sections of the building. Not Oculus, I think it was the Microsoft HoloLens they were using to kind of bridge data. So I see, if people keep embracing technology the way it is, the way things are advancing, it's going to become a lot easier, hopefully, because we have so much great data. It's a matter of just tying it into that common repository. Going back to the augmented reality with the VR eyeglass set, the demonstration I saw that they're developing is where you could actually be able to walk into a room, put your glasses on, start looking at a device, and be able to actually scroll with your finger to actually pull up wiring diagrams, mechanical flow diagrams, start looking at application guides. As you're standing in front of the device, you can actually hit on that. And then say if you run into a problem, you can actually trigger the headset, make a phone call, get tech support. Tech support now can see what you're seeing. It was very, very impressive. So I think if we keep leaning on the side of technology as far as the advantages of it, I think it's going to make a lot of people's life a lot easier versus trying to hold your cell phone up between your shoulder and your head, or even if you're on a Bluetooth, and trying to like dig through different guides and figure out how to troubleshoot things through a much more detailed step process, that you'll be more or less boots on the ground, eyes on the device, be able to actually see all these different things, but then also have someone be able to see it through your frame of view of what's going on. So we definitely live in very interesting times when it comes down to technology, and a lot of great companies are trying to figure out can they make operations life easier through it. So good times ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And with all the pressure with utility grid power shortages and having to do more with less and alternative energy sources, for sure, there's got to be a lot more demand for knowing what's going on in the facilities right now to predict what needs to happen a couple weeks or a couple months out from now, so they're not caught totally off guard.
Yeah, and some of like the operations teams, like you got someone new that's on staff going through, they get in front of a panel, they have no idea what they're really looking at in detail because it's maybe the first time they ever opened the door on it. That's where being able to share that data interactive with other people that are maybe the ones that built it or other people knowledgeable, it helps decrease that potential downtime trying to keep everything up and running. So I think it's an excellent stepping stone.
Hi, this is Lloyd Fussell, President of Gen Systems, and you are watching the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast.
Hi, this is Jesse Webb, VP of Strategic Development with JERA. You are watching the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast.
When the two of you think about where on-site power generation, liquid natural gas, turbines, where all of this is headed in the next couple of years, how do you envision that your daily routines might change looking out into the crystal ball with a 2, 3, 4 year time horizon from now? Do you think you're going to largely be spending your time doing most of the same things, or do you think there's going to be a paradigm shift where your daily routine changes quite a bit?
I don't know that it's going to change our daily routine that much. I think where it'll change my daily routine is, usually I get up, I read my performance reports from where our units are deployed the day before. It's a very dynamic environment that we're deployed to now, where we're moving every 20 or 30 days, moving our equipment. So there's a lot of logistics involved with that, and a lot of created maintenance from just the brutality of moving across the oil field with this type of equipment. Whereas in the future, as we begin to enter this market, our equipment is going to be stationary. It's going to require less maintenance and less reports. There's going to be a lot more reports to read, but I think it's going to be a lot more. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be a lot more easy to deal with the very motion active business that we're in currently. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. I think Lloyd said that well. I don't know if I could even add to that.
Hi, I'm Maria del Pilar Galeano, Business Development Manager, Data Centers for Legrand, South America, and I invite you to come to Data Centers Go-To-Market podcast. More than welcome. Let's speak about more than technology. What's in the back of a business development movement. See you there.
So we were talking about how challenges can be addressed many times with paying more attention to soft skills, paying more attention to the pace of change, and realizing that the status quo is quite different. I'm curious, when you think about your future role, what you think is going to change over the next 2 to 4 years in leading business development for data centers in South America for Legrand. What changes about your daily, weekly, monthly routine, and what do you think stays the same? And I would, not just your role in leadership role, but among the people that are on your teams that work in various countries throughout South America. What do you think is changing about what it takes to be successful in business development and sales and marketing with growing Legrand's business?
We're having big change in our mindset. 2 years ago, we were thinking about product, only the product. Now we are thinking in solution and service. We have countries that are able to give service like startup, service like commissioning, service like maintenance. So now we are thinking in a global way. In the past, we only offer some products. Now we are offering solutions, which is a big challenge because we are kind of new in this kind of system of working. But we are now having good experience. Legrand is a company that does investment all over the world. And in our countries, that investment includes service companies. So now we are manufacturers and we have those services in a complete solution. And there's a new company in our area that is also able to be total constructor, total consultants. We call it, I forgot that. Well, it's a total consultancy. It's able to do all the designs, able to do, to give all the products, to do the installation. It's a global contractor. That's the word. Thank you. It's the global contractor. So now now we're changing our mindset. We are in the process of learning from the manufacturing side and the service side, and we are working together. We have different teams all around South America. We have different ways now to do marketing. We are thinking more about the profile of our user. Our user is not only a person who's looking for a picture with some values or some features of the product. It's a person who needs solutions for his or her difficulties. So now we're thinking more about giving solution 360 degrees than only going with a sales notebook to give some products. Now we are thinking about a complete solution, and we're learning, and this experience has been really, really, really important for us.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
This is Peter Gross. I'm the managing partner of PMG Consulting and Advisory Company, and you're watching Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Peter, when you think about the startups that you come across that are embracing new forms of technology, cooling, scalability, AI, density, is there any one area that you think is so exciting that you're going to look back 2 years from now and realize that something that was just the beginning of an idea right now ended up being huge, driving the industry forward?
Well, the industry is now at clearly inflection point. It has never seen anything that comes close to the level of growth and the kind of changes we are seeing today. It's clearly
a unique time in our industry. It's never been like this, and I doubt that it will ever occur again. So this period, probably the next 5 years or so, we're going to see an unprecedented growth. So, the projection is that the next 40 years, there are going to be more data centers being built in this world than everything that has been built since the 80s or so. The industry will spend over $1 trillion in the next 4 or 5 years. Just in this country, we're going to probably build anywhere from 17 to 25 gigawatts worth of data centers. So each period has its own priorities or shortages. Right now, it's the big thing is power, right? Everybody is trying to identify a location that has power, ideally that has power that it's relatively low cost, power that has it's either green or have some green component. And the world is running short of power. It's you look at what's happening in this country with not only the data centers, but also the EV charging stations and all the manufacturing industries moving back here. The demand and stress on the utility is tremendous. So a lot of the innovation today, a lot of the new things being done today have to do with addressing this issue. It's so pressing. As I said, new source of power, ways to address, find other sources like hydrogen or leveraging all the renewable energy we have, using energy storage and so on. I mean, there are many elements here that are probably of great interest today, but in the long run, the business is a lot more complex and involves a lot more than these immediate needs. And what's next? Quantum computing. What is that going to do? And it's going to also turn this whole industry upside down. The look of the data center is going to be fundamentally different. It's very difficult to predict how things will evolve. But the one thing is certain: the industry will grow at an unprecedented pace, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how all of the power constraints shake out over the next couple of years and how they're ultimately solved. And I keep hearing that even the demand for EVs, for electric cars, is going to be on a collision course with the demand for grid power for data centers. So certainly a lot of incentives, a lot of demand to figure this out.
Yeah, right. And that's why one of the things that fascinate me is the whole energy storage domain, which has marginal impact on the data centers, although they are very important. But I believe that energy storage has a fundamental contribution to the whole decarbonization of the world, and primarily is driven by the EV industry, right? The electric vehicle industry, but the impact is much broader in terms of both in terms of data center and the storage there, and interaction with the grid, but also if you look at the ability to improve the behavior of the grid, responding to these demands, and also the instability created by these large chunks of renewable that are coming in or getting out of the grid. All these things make and that's one, as I said, one element all the interesting things happening in this industry.
Hi, this is Rick Grundy from Avtech. You're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Rick, the final area I want to ask you about today is how do you think your routine may change as CEO, as leader of a software company in and around the data center ecosystem over the next 2 to 4 years?
So one of the ways it's changing directly for us is we're actually pushing more innovation and accountability down into the organization. I think it brings our conversation full circle with where we started, about how I started and what the advice would be of bringing people into the organization. What we're finding is that the more capability we push further down into the organization, the more good things happen. The more opportunity and the more we focus on trying to determine what somebody's individual potential is, the greater our potential as an organization comes. So, really where my focus has been over the last couple of years, and I expect to fully continue to being on that, is really focusing on that core value of thriving on growth, of developing a culture of learning, a culture of expansion, a culture of, new ability. And rather than feeling like it's up to me to then drive the implementation of that, trust that by creating a great team, they're the ones driving the implementation. And I just need to tell us where we're going. So it's a really exciting time for us as an organization. I think it reflects what's really an exciting time for the industry with new technology and emerging technologies and changing capabilities. And the entire economy depends on digital infrastructure. So we are really at a central place of the global economy with an opportunity to influence in ways that we can't even imagine at this point. And so by creating that focus on growth and opportunity and skills expansion, we can ensure that our team's going to be ready to respond with whatever the new opportunity is 12 months from now or 6 years from now. And that's really what my focus has been as an organizational leader.
This is Tim Heidel, co-founder and CEO at Veer, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Final area I want to ask you about today is when you look into your crystal ball with a 2 to 4 year time horizon, how do you think leading a company like Veer is going to change, and what do you think would stay the same?
Yeah, so the startup journey is really exciting, right? Because you transit through all these different levels of maturity. So today we're focused on building demonstrations of our first generation products and focusing on lining up pilots to deploy with key partners to demonstrate the full capacity of what we can do with our cables, right? 3 megawatts in a single cable. And what does that look like? And how does it interact with the pods? Next year, we're going to be focused on building out and qualifying our manufacturing facilities and really firming up all the resiliency within our supply chain and getting ready to start doing commercial deliveries. That requires us to build a project execution team that will work side by side with the folks that are going to go out and implement all of our technologies. You look forward 2 or 4 years, and we expect to be in commercial projects that we're delivering into mega scale campuses and starting to grow the overall volume of our deliveries. And so, I think it's super exciting to be in an environment where, what you're working on and what you're focusing on every day is changing so quickly. And the core competencies you need is obviously changing so quickly as well. And it's amazing every day to see our team maturing in real time and learning in real time and being capable of doing things today that they could not possibly have thought about doing 2 years ago. And I expect to see a lot of that same transformation in the next 2 years.
They're growing with you.
Exactly right.
Cool.
I'm Dan Lawrence from OBM, CEO and co-founder, and today you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
The final area I wanted to ask you about today is your thoughts on where you think growing a company like OBM may change in the next 2 to 4 years. Do you see some trends with the kind of users? Do you see trends with regulatory environment, utility environment, adjacent interests in generative AI? What do you think looks the same? What do you think changes about what you spend your time on in the next 2 to 4 years?
So we wake up every day and one of our core values, our mission here is to really unlock energy agility. And the way that we do that is through load flexibility and just kind of preaching that narrative. The grid as a whole needs flexible loads. So the narrative that's kind of getting built right now is data centers are a problem, but it's really not data centers that are a problem. It's the fact that industries just aren't flexible. So there's a lot of power that's taken off the grid by loads that would consider themselves to be firm. Or maybe they're loads that consider themselves to be flexible, but the way that I, as a startup trying to scale towards a very flexible energy future, their definition of flexibility is nowhere close to ours, because they are, hey, we got a phone call, we've got an hour to call up somebody and they're going to show up at the facility and start turning things off. That's how steel, cold storage, wastewater, a lot of the chemical manufacturing, they would call themselves flexible because they can respond to a light that turns on, or they can respond to a phone call or an email dispatch. But what I would consider flexible is, can you do everything different within 5 minutes? And if you can't, it's because you're not automated and you're not as good of a resource as you could be. So I think that for our business, we're really focused on how do we solve these energy problems in industries that expand beyond just data centers. It's not a data center or AI factory problem that we're solving right now. It is the fact that just the grid needs more flexibility, and the AI factory constraints that we hear in the news a lot, those all go away if everybody else is just a lot more flexible. So it's really a flexible future. Our company is hyper aligned on adding more value through flexibility to any type of industry. So really for us, the platform as we build it over the next couple of years, it's going to continue to be very energy focused. Just we are really more of like an aggregator of signals, an aggregator of data about the grid, pricing, demand response events. We aggregate all of that together and then we control something in response to it. And that has been Bitcoin mining. We've got some pilots on the AI factory side that we're tiptoeing towards. And we are also very focused from a biz dev perspective just on other industry that, in our opinion, could be more flexible and just isn't. So it's really kind of the same platform, but it's what's turning on, what's turning off, and where can we bring this dimmer switch to an industry that would consider themselves flexible, but in a binary way. We want to make it more of a gradient to how they use power, and that's going to unlock a lot of great benefit for everybody.
Yeah, really interesting to see that opportunity emerge and evolve, because when you started OBM, there really was no one knew who Sam Altman was.
No, we didn't even have a power problem. We just had a driving problem. So anything that I'm saying about the grid, that's all stuff that you just pick up and read about. And it's not too hard to go from zero to pretty good regarding the grid and holistically how it works. We didn't have an energy problem for ourselves. We were only 10 machines. It was running in a garage where nobody was around. Maybe it got a little warm and that was about it. But you fast forward and you start to listen to your user base a lot more, and you look at how they're transitioning to other industry and the problems that they're going to face on that. It all comes down to power. So we were at a very critical moment for the company. We had to say, how do we start solving these power problems, and how do we bring some innovation that just hasn't been unlocked before?
Hi, this is Tanya Lewitt of Alternate eSource, and you are watching a Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Yeah, at some point there's if you look at what's happened with the big SaaS and platform companies in the last couple of years, where Google said they were tired of waiting for higher education to change, and they got into creating this whole certificate program, and AWS has created a ton of courses, IBM has created a ton of courses. At some point, this is going to start being a legit competitive threat for traditional higher education if higher education doesn't get on board with similar programs. It's inconceivable to me that there's still only one major university in the US where you can basically get a data center degree. And there's a couple that are trying to get in this even bigger, but how is it you have 5 or 6 primary data center markets and then another 15 or 20 tier 2 markets? How is it that there's not a major program in New York and in DC and San Francisco and in Chicago for getting a bachelor's of science in data center management or something like that?
Exactly.
It has to change.
It has to change. And we're on that, that kind of pushing that change. And hey, maybe AI can help us with that. I don't know.
With developing the curriculum. Yeah.
Definitely, it could help with the content. It could help facilitate and get things, again, that expeditious action, right? So we'd certainly like to think so.
Going from the subject matter interviews to being able to do the editing and repurposing and packaging and chunking up. Yeah, for sure. That's what generative AI is made for.
Hey everyone, this is Lauren Long with Digital Infrastructure Advisors Limited and Clear Sustainability, and you're listening to the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast with Joshua Feinberg.
Lauren, when you think about what you do on a weekly basis, your weekly routines, your monthly routines, how you work with your clients, what do you envision changing in the next 2, 3, 4 years out?
Well, I don't know that. Number one, I don't have a routine. It seems like every day and every week is a little bit different, but that's okay because that works well with my ADD and my neurodiversity. But I think, kind of going back to something I said earlier, I think the feelings or the sentiments around sustainability, I think we're going to see it shift from I don't want to say happy, so let me just take an aside. A lot of times on panels when we're having sustainability focused panels, you'll hear, the moderator or someone say, hey, let's leave with some good stuff. Let's make people feel good. Now, that aside, there are a lot of great things going on. I love Yuval Bashar with ECL and his off-grid hydrogen-powered megawatt data center in Texas. Is it perfect? No. Is it moving the needle significantly in an innovative direction? Yes. That's fantastic. Good for him. And Dean Nelson is the first customer in there with Yuval. So, good for them. But I think we're going to see a sobering within not only our industry, but all industries and regulatory bodies as we start grappling with the magnitude of what we're doing. And I think you'll also start seeing, we're creeping toward, every time there's another COP, you see more people like, we got to go. Like one of the comments that I heard out of the New York Climate Week that was last month is there was a pretty vocal sentiment there. The tagline of the conference was, "It's time." And there were a lot of people like, no, "It's time" was about a decade ago. It's past time. I think you're going to see a sobering as every year the IPCC puts out another report. And I'm sorry if you look at you have to believe the science, but if you do believe the science and you follow the science, putting out a sustainability report that starts with, in order to stay below 1.5 C, science is pretty much telling us that's in the rearview mirror. So now we got to keep it from hitting 2. So it's going to start getting more important. The science is going to become more reinforcing. And I think we're going to see sustainability discussions get a lot more serious, and they're going to be much more prominent operationally, financially, regulatory, obviously, and in the boardroom as well. And I think investors, I think that's another big one you're going to see coming, is the large investors are going to recognize the risk that they have. And that's where the pressure really comes in.
It's an interesting byproduct with all of this as well. I originally grew up in New Jersey, but I've lived in South Florida for over 20 years. And this particular year has been a rough year for many parts of the state, to say the least, with storms. But it's been about 20 years since there's been so many back-to-back storms like this. There's easily a dozen states in the US that are heavily impacted by monstrously ferocious hurricanes that would have been once in 500-year storms, 50-year storms, 25-year storms a generation ago. And when you hear the discussions coming out of the National Hurricane Center and NOAA, they talk about that the intensity is fueled by the temperature of the water. So the question is like the surface temperatures of the water, are they feeding the ability to go from a tropical storm to a monster Cat 4 or Cat 5 in 12, 18 hours? And what are the implications of that with such a large percentage of the US living in areas that could be hurt? And it's not just the Southeast anymore, all the way up the East Coast has been impacted over the past decade. So that could potentially be another area that forces more conversations around this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's, and this is where political views and political agendas, I think, sometimes skew the science, and it's frustrating. As a passionate environmentalist and sustainability professional, I of course get frustrated when people refute the science. That the climate change is not tied to man-made carbon, et cetera. And my answer to that is, okay, but we can all get together and agree that an island of trash in the Pacific Ocean, the size of Texas, we can all get together and agree that that's bad, right? We're all going to agree with that. That's not okay. We can look at the degradation of biodiversity, the loss of habitat, and the accelerated extinction rate of species, and we can all agree on that. That's bad. And I do. By the way, I think the bright side of things getting more serious is I hope that everyone is able to come together and agree that this is serious, and we don't have as many debates.
Yep, for sure slows down progress, creates a lot of friction. It's different sides that want to create friction for their own interests, but yeah, just for sure it slows down progress when this is being debated as opposed to being actioned.
Do you want to take your learnings from this podcast episode to the next level? We've got you covered. We've prepared a special companion guide to help you do so. Over the next 5 years, data center facilities are going to change more than they have in the previous 2 decades. AI-driven workloads, grid bottlenecks, power and sustainability pressures, and a radically self-driven buyer's journey are going to dramatically change and rewrite what it means to design, operate, and grow digital infrastructure. In this ebook, which you'll find in the description for the podcast episode, you'll hear from 25 frontline experts, commissioning engineers, facilities leaders, power and cooling innovators, go-to-market executives, and founders share how they see the future unfolding. You'll learn what's coming for power and on-site generation, high density and AI-ready designs, operations 2.0, sustainability and regulation, plus the careers and skills that will be in highest demand. Whether you're responsible for facility, operations, or go-to-market, this is your playbook for staying relevant and creating advantage in the next wave of growth. Download your copy now from the link in the description.
Hi, I'm Christian Bonilla.
And I'm Sean McKay.
We're the co-CEOs of DMark Energy Solutions, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
How do you think the industry is going to change in the next 2, 3, 4 years if you had to look out into your crystal ball? It must be something that you're thinking about as you're building your roadmap, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I think, I guess, it's going to continue to emerge. New technology is emerging that, some of the conferences we were just attending and sponsoring and listening to some of the conversations of how maybe AI compute loads or clusters start to be designed to be more flexible loads on the grid, right? So that just the nature of how designs to meet the need of AI compute, we're in the infancy of that, right? So if you look at just how many times the chip manufacturers and the board manufacturers, and they're trying to they're upping efficiency and bringing down, how the efficiency of compute, but also efficiency in power so that you can get more for less power. But then the characteristics of that are going to change, like how loads can stop and be moved to another cluster somewhere else in the grid that has cheaper power. Those are things that are going to be coming, where loads are moving both to meet critical times of day where whether it's on grid and you have certain time peak periods where you may get curtailed even, but if you're a peak time, can it move as a bigger system? Can it be set up so that compute can move around? So I think there's gonna be a lot of just very new innovative thinking about how to solve the bigger problem, not just solve how to use the pieces that we're used to having on the chessboard. There's going to be new pieces coming out and new strategies to solve this. So that's the one thing that'll be true. It's going to continue to, I think it's going to more prefabrication, more experimenting with how to deploy in a diversified way. I think we're going to see a lot more of that and more part of our even environments where compute lives, not just big data centers you pass on a highway.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, it just, so much of it comes back to the power question. I think I forget who it was who published, it might have been Wood Mackenzie or someone the other day, even 70% of data center development stakeholders or project stakeholders, I forget what term they used, but expect that their future projects will all assume on-site generation as a starting point. And what a change that is from, I don't know, pick your demarcation point in the past. I think that continues. You didn't ask about the, maybe at this layer, but I do see like not consolidation, but more, not just integrated projects and co-development, but just business combinations between those seems kind of inevitable to me. As compute becomes so disproportionately power hungry, even as chips get more efficient and racks get denser and cooling gets better, and all of that stuff kind of points to efficiency improving. I think what does the compute workload look like when anybody can spin up agents running in the background, computing and doing tasks and reasoning all the time in the background? I don't see the demand for compute and the need for power abating in the forecastable future. And who knows, it might eat those words and there are other exogenous shocks that can happen. But I just think the ever tighter integration of power and generation and the ancillary functions and equipment coming more under one roof, if for no other reason than procurement and sourcing and balance sheet efficiency.
Hi, this is Ben Myers from DH Pace, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
With that in mind, Ben, how do you see your job, your team's role in the data center ecosystem changing in the next 2, 3, 4 years when you look out into your crystal ball? What do you think stays the same? What do you think is different?
Yeah, so I would tell you that the biggest change that I'm seeing is a lot of folks, and this isn't just in what we do. I hear this from, again, non-competing folks in the industry that I talk to all the time, moving to more of the owner furnished, contractor installed OFCI, and just these owner operators really wanting to have a bigger stake in the supply chain. They're still fresh off of COVID and all the crazy lead time issues. And so people want to control it more, not only from a cost perspective, but just from an uptime perspective. And so I think over the next few years, you're going to see more and more of the owner operators taking an active role in that and helping to make more of the decisions on inventorying and product alignment so that it makes their life easier, versus today, a lot of that goes through the GC and they're allowing the GC to make the decision Sometimes, depending on the GC, they're great. They know what they're doing. They're not hyper focused on cost. They're hyper focused on value. Others are not. Others are only focused on squeezing every penny out of the equation that they can. And that's created heartburn. You have some products that are 32-week lead times. And if people aren't taking that into account, you can have some real, major issues. And so as the owners get more and more involved, I think there's going to be a change in the total supply chain.
Hey guys, it's Zachary Penny, the CEO of Empirics Partners. You're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Zach, when you look into your crystal ball 2, 3, 4 years out from now, how do you envision that growing a firm like Empirics may stay the same? How do you envision that it may be a little bit different?
Man, I hope if my ball plays out how I want it to, life's going to be good, right? Because I think there's just overall in the industry, there's a bunch of gold in the ground. And this is the gold rush and it's time to pick it up. But no individual firm can do it by themselves. And I think having the right partners and growing our firm with those right partners, not only our customers, but also the OEM partners we have, the service provider partners, your GCs and A&Es, all of that. We have to all work together and kind of go out there and collectively build that, like 3-pronged little claw, like in the claw games, and reach down and grab that gold together and figure out how to use it the best. And so I see the firm over the next 3 to 4 years, building on those strategic relationships that we already have and in evolving them into what needs to be here for the success of the industry. Because not to be a broken record, but what got us here is not going to get us there. But those relationships are going to be the basis of what we build to figure out what that next widget is or that next solution to meet the challenge of tomorrow. So I see the firm ever evolving, not only from a capabilities perspective, but from a relationship perspective, so that we can meet the challenge of tomorrow.
Hi, this is Greg Ratcliffe, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Greg, when you think about what you work on a daily, weekly, monthly basis leading innovation, how do you envision that innovation may change over the next 2, 3, 5 years going out? What is changes about being in a chief innovation officer role for an enterprise environment?
That I may be the last of the innovation officers at Vertiv, could be the first and the last. This world of innovation, it really took off maybe 15 years ago. And there was some great work that said this was, that companies needed this. But I see it as more in the future, combining with planning and strategy. So much of what I'm working on outside of the university space and startups is directly tied to, wow, that's a neat company. Should we consider a partnership or something even deeper? And so this thing that started as just sort of innovation and help the culture have an open mindset for anything new that adds value, that is changing to be more of a planning, strategy, execution role, which is exactly what it is. It's a project that has a different kind of outcome. Innovation projects have an outcome of maturing, so that, at least in our world, of maturing so that engineering can own it and take it. And then the new product development process carries it all the way to customers. So the closer those get, the lines will be blurred, and that's a great thing.
Hi, it's Martin Regas from Johnson Controls. You're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
When it comes to the future also, I always ask guests on this podcast how they envision that their daily or weekly or monthly routines may change in the next 2, 3, 4 years when they look into your crystal ball. So from your standpoint of leading Johnson Controls data center infrastructure, what do you think is going to change in the coming years? What do you think will stay the same?
Yeah. I think when I think about what's going to stay the same, I'm sure you probably agree with this, will be relationships. I think everything's still, not everything, most everything's still going to come down to relationships. So building, maintaining relationships with people will always be a key part of how we do business and how we get things done as human beings. There's that one Simpsons episode where the newscaster says, "I for one welcome my new robotic overlords." And I'm kind of excited about agentic AI. That's what I see coming from me personally. I mean, I use AI for probably the same way everybody's using it. I use it for research and proposals and all kinds of, letter writing and reviewing complicated documents and summarization and probably everything that everyone out there uses it for. I mean, today, one of my favorite tools is Notebook LLM. I use Notebook LLM. I love podcasts, and I'll take, someone sends me a couple large PDFs of this research that was done on the data center industry or cooling or something. I'll throw it into LLM and say, give me a 15-minute podcast. And there's something that would take me, 8 hours to read, and I get to listen to something, and I enjoy it. I enjoy learning that way. But when it comes to, so that's me today, but when it comes to the future, I'm very much looking forward to some type of agentic AI handling things that I just don't want to do anymore, or do things that it can do better than I can do. Given my knowledge and given the certain guardrails that I give it. So making my life faster, easier, more efficient, I see that coming. I certainly, probably like you, we read a lot about, what are those guardrails and, how do we make sure that we stay safe? And that's, of course, a concern. But overall, I'm a techno optimist.
I pretty much do the same thing. I'll be passively listening to a YouTube video while I'm going for a walk, where I can't really be, I'm basically using it like the audio version of it. I'm listening in my ear. So
Right.
I'll come back and I'll take that 55-minute or hour-and-a-half podcast and I'll say, summarize the key takeaways and contextualize it for what you know about me.
Nice. Yeah.
And it works.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
The question is, like, what's the future of long form content when YouTube Shorts and what they call it, the TikTokification of the world, where everyone wants to watch the clips out of the podcast and watch the 37-second segments out of the podcast, and are we completely fracturing people's attention?
But do we still want to watch movies? I still want to watch a nice long movie. I love it. I enjoy it. I don't think that would go away, but yeah, certainly getting information. I like as much information as I can possibly ram into my head in a reasonable way is good for me. But maybe it's too fragmented.
Hard to think of it, but there is probably a time within 10 years where doing a traditional Google search is going to be like looking for a phone book or a card catalog at the library or microfiche or
I remember, payphones, and certainly you're on the street in New York City because I got to call somebody for a meeting, and you're like, okay, get your quarters out, dial their number with the rotary
pagers,
set up your meeting. Like, okay.
I remember having a calling card that could consolidate all the business calls in one place for consolidated like expense reports before. It was probably even before dollar a phone minutes. And then for dollar a phone minutes, you used it sparingly, but you used it a little bit more, and that with the pager. And and then we got to the point where it got to basically unlimited and nobody ever stops talking anymore. Yeah. And there went highway safety.
You were high tech. I don't know if people are talking that much. I think the younger generation is texting, I believe.
Yeah.
But I'm still a talker.
Definitely agree.
Hi, I'm Rosie Rosillo. I work in Legrand, Colombia as marketing engineer. This is Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
When you look out into your crystal ball and you think about what is going to be the same about being a marketer and what's going to change about being a marketer over the next 2 to 4 years? How do you think your job, how do you think your career might need to adapt to changes in the marketplace?
Well, I think it's more related about the change of the AI. Now we have this wonderful tool which help us to analyze the market in a very quickly way and view. It could take you weeks looking for information, analyzing your data about the market. So I think so in 2 years, we will develop new ones, strategies, and more quickly than we do right now.
So you think a lot of it is just speed, where some of the AI that you're using right now is giving a competitive advantage, but at some point it ceases to be a competitive advantage. Everyone's doing it, and it's always a matter of figuring out what's next that can give you a bigger edge. I know we talk all the time about, hey, I just found this new prompt to use when we're trying to get this function to come out of this tool, and it's all great and everything. It's just that, okay, so we figured out something that may be giving us an edge, but I don't know, 6, 12, 18 months, it's common knowledge.
Yes, and actually it's not just make a prompt. I mean, but it's more than that. I mean, you can, with the AI, you can analyze, a big size of data which you have from the last years, and you want to make comparisons. So now with the AI, you could do it in a very fast way. I mean, in minutes, you can have the results. And on Plus, I mean, it's something simple like make the comparison between 2 products. You made a chat with ChatGPT and you have the result very quickly. For sure, you have to use your expertise to analyze that conclusion, right? But could help you to find that, to get the information in a very high, quickly. So you can, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially with qualitative data, like,
yes.
For example, if you have a field on a contact form that's a write-in field, and you say, okay, take these write-in answers from hundreds of people or thousands or tens of thousands of people, tell me the top 10 most frequently written in responses. And you run this exercise once a week or once a quarter and see if there's any changes. And gosh, that would have been so challenging to figure out in the past. But now you're getting that in your own words. So you think about the speed even of just being able to like capture buyer persona kinds of research.
Yes, and actually, I mean, this is related to the marketing, but especially to the data analytic area. Related to the marketing. I mean, data analytic, and without that, marketing cannot exist. Cannot exist.
Hey, this is Brandon Smith. I am Vice President of Global Sales and Product at Zinc 5, and this is the Data Center Go-to-Market Podcast.
Brandon, the final area I wanted to ask you about today was, when you look into your crystal ball, what do you feel the future of your role looks like 2, 3, 4 years out from now, heading up a sales and product organization for a company that's so heavily invested in energy storage?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that 2 ways. For the product side of it, thankfully, I guess, batteries are becoming a more important part of life. That's data center, that's transportation, that's everything. And a novel chemistry like nickel zinc has a very unique value proposition to bring to data center and other markets. So thankfully, the product side of it, I think, is there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth. It's going to be very exciting how that changes. And there's going to be new opportunities for all products, including nickel zinc battery chemistries as an example, as the markets change and uncover new problems that need to be solved. From a management perspective, like, what does a sales and product leader look like 5 years from now? I really think the proliferation of AI tools are going to make the day-to-day report writing, MRD, product requirement document, PRD document type writing much simpler. And we're going to be able to lean on a lot of these tools to create and iterate faster than we ever were, because that took a lot of manpower to write these things down. Where I see leaders in this business going is the strategy and the creativity, because all the information's there at the end of the day, right? It's all at your fingertips. So what do you do with it? How do you interpret it? And how you use it? So that's the strategy, the creativity, and the relationship building. I think leaders that can bring strategy, creativity, and relationship building can leverage all of these tools to 10x their output in a way, right? Because you can get the stuff that takes a lot of time done much faster with some of these tools.
So when your board members are listening to the recording, be like, cool, Brandon just said we can raise our goals by 10x in the next 2 to 4 years. But if everyone has these tools, it's a leveling up factor across the whole industry. You're at a competitive disadvantage if you're not adopting these tools and strategies and methodology.
Exactly. Look, if the product manager next to you can manage 5 products because they have AI tools at their disposal doing the work that takes 40 hours a week typing and writing and things like that, and they can put their subject matter expertise to use in the creativity and the strategy of where these product lines need to go and should go, they're going to be a higher performer and more sought after than someone who can only manage one product line, as an example, because they're caught up writing all of the components, caught up doing some of the busy work, I would say, that needs to be done and is very important, but you can probably lean on AI to accomplish much faster.
Yeah, I mean, as recently as 5 years ago, there were a lot of executives that would send an assistant to a meeting to take notes. I think the AI note takers have pretty much eliminated the need for that. And yeah, there's just so much of a productivity boost that's happening across the board. And especially when you talk about your category and the amount of education that's involved, the amount of account management that's involved, and all the different markets where Zing 5 operates, seems like that would really give you superpowers to be able to personalize, customize the experience, and be able to spot opportunities that may have taken hundreds of hours before and now can surface in seconds.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's only going to get faster and grow faster, right? As we were talking about, it's just getting started.
You say this is the worst AI we're ever going to have?
Yeah, we'll see.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.